everyone, welcome back to my channel. This video is very late. I didn't do a wrap up for January and I'm late with my February wrap up. This video is basically going to be my January reading wrap up and February reading wrap up. This video is going to be spoiler free as well. So let's get into the video because we have got quite a few books. I've read 9 books so far, so we've got 9 books to talk about, so let's get into it. So this first book is actually a bit of not really a genre that I really go for normally. My first read of January was The Disenchantment by Celia, but this book is a historical fiction and it's set during the affair of poisonings in Paris in the 17th century. So the city is rife with poisonings, black magic. Poisonings have basically become more common within the upper class and many women are basically being imprisoned even from slight suspicion of poisoning their husbands. The main character of this story is Baroness Marie Catherine. She's unhappy in her marriage and secretly in love with the Countess. Then one day the Countess's devotion leads into an act of murder, and then basically the story goes on to a cat and mouse game with the police. I'd recently just watched the whole of Downton Abbey, so I was kind of looking for something similar to Downton, a bit period, a bit kind of like that vibe. So I picked this up in Beverly Bookshop and the premise of this sounded really good. I really liked the cover anyway. Started reading this a few days towards the end of December and then I read it a few days into January. Got to just over 100 pages and I decided to DNF this. In the end, it just wasn't for me. I found it quite boring. I just wasn't wanting to pick it up. So I thought, right, we're not starting the year with a book that's going to take me forever to read. If I'm not liking it, we're DNFing it. So that's what I did. Also, when it comes to rating and reviewing books, I don't rate books that I have DNF'd because I haven't read it all, but it does count towards my reading goal, especially if I've read over 50 to 100 pages. I've spent time on it. The next book that I picked up, the cover always intrigued me so much. I thought it looked really cool. And yeah, I don't know why it took me so long to buy it. The book I'm talking about is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. This book follows Sally Diamond and she can't understand why what she did was so strange. She was only doing what her father told her to do, to put him out with the rubbish when he dies. So now, because of Sally's actions, she is at the centre of attention, not only from the media, but a sinister voice pops up from her past that she has no memory of. I picked this up originally and it kind of caught my attention anyway because the cover just was given Wednesday Addams and I love Wednesday Addams. I love the Addams family. So as soon as I saw this book, it kept drawing my attention, it kept drawing me in, and I'm very, very glad I finally got it. Sally Diamond is a much bigger story than I initially anticipated it to be. I was not expecting it to be as deep, I was not expecting it to be as dark as it is. Sally Diamond and this story is incredibly complex, it's compelling. Sally is a survivor of a really cruel and disturbing past that's essentially just full of heartbreak, it's full of trauma, and that's slowly unraveled to you as a reader and you really do feel for Sally and you do really start to understand the reasons why she is the way that she is. I loved Sally's character, I loved her in her commentary and her perspective on things. Sally's unfiltered honesty in this book is absolutely brilliant and I thought she was such an amazing character. She's to the point, I loved the way she thought. This book is dark and it's extremely cruel, and yeah, there was a few points where I was a bit shocked and a bit speechless. I devoured this book. I did not want to put it down. I was picking it up every chance I got. I was just addicted to wanting to know more. I just needed to know what happened and kept wanting to know what was going on. I just want to say that this book also contains quite a lot of trigger warnings, so just make sure that you're aware of them before going into it because it does get quite dark and it is quite heartbreaking at times and upsetting. Strange Sally Diamond is a book and a character that will stick with me for quite a long time. I most certainly will not forget Sally because yeah, this is incredible. It's a straight 5 out of 5 stars. I knew kind of from the start anyway that this was going to be a 5 stars, and yeah, just throughout the book I had no doubts. It was amazing. So this next book that I picked up is actually my first reread, I think. This is the first book that I've actually reread, and that's because Onyx was coming out at the end of January. I read Fourth Wing back in November of 2023 and I did remember a lot of the story, to be honest, but I did want to pick it up because I kind of wanted to annotate the book. So I decided to reread Fourth Wing. As you can see, I've annotated the life out of this book. There's tabs everywhere, there's annotations everywhere. If you want to see a bit more of that, I have a short that kind of shows more of my annotations. I am starting to annotate most of my books now, so I can always do more of a deep dive into how I annotate and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a different video. I would be very surprised if you don't know what this book is about. This is essentially about a girl that has trained her whole life to become a scribe, and suddenly she's then thrust into joining the Riders Quadrant, the most deadliest quadrant you could be in. If a dragon's not going to kill you, then watch out, because your fellow cadets are probably going to try kill you as well. I decided to reread this before Onyx came out, and I'm really, really happy that I actually did, because it just reminded me how much that I loved this first book. I love the world, I love the characters, I love the romance. I don't know how you couldn't love the romance. And two dragons in particular, I remember getting goosebumps the first time that we meet them. And yeah, goosebumps again this time round. I was still an emotional wreck at the end of this book. If you've read Fourth Wing, you will understand what I'm talking about. Thoroughly enjoyed this. 5 out of 5 stars. I rated it 5 out of 5 in November of 2023, and that's not changed this time. Love, 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 love this first book. So because I decided to reread Fourth Wing, I still had a fair few days after that before the release of Onyx Storm, so I thought, let's re-listen and reread Iron Flame. So I decided to re-listen to the graphic audio of Iron Flame. The first time round, I didn't read the book. I just thought, because of the amount of mixed reviews with this book and the size of it, I was like, yeah, not too sure about this yet. So yeah, I decided to re-listen and kind of follow along in the book at the same time. This is going to be a shorter review because I don't have a lot really to say on this. When it comes to the graphic audio, I will rate that 5 stars, because listening to a graphic audio book is just incredible. And if you've not listened to a graphic audio book yet, I would recommend that you go do that, because it's just so cool. You've got background music, you've got sound effects, you've got an entire cast of characters, and yeah, it's like listening to a movie in your mind. This was really up and down for me. It was really average. When you read Fourth Wing and how amazing Fourth Wing was, to then kind of go to this, there were parts of it that I really enjoyed and was like, oh whoa, especially towards the end. I was quite bored, especially even still kind of listening to the graphic audio. There was parts where I was a bit like, this is getting repetitive now. The thing that saved this for me was the ending. The cliffhanger had me speechless. I was like, what? I did definitely enjoy the second part to this book a lot more than the first part. It was just slap bang average. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, kind of liked it. 3 stars. We're now on to Onyx Storm, the third book in the Empyrean series. Getting this after finishing Iron Flame, I was so excited because of that cliffhanger. The start of this book had me feeling really positive, because the end papers, I was in love with the end papers, and then I saw that a glossary had been added, and I was like, amazing. As soon as I see a glossary in a fantasy book, I'm like, right, amazing. Effort has been put into this. We're on the third book, so a glossary could be really helpful, and evidently it was not helpful. To be honest, it's a pretty sad excuse for a glossary, in my opinion. I've recently just read When the Moon Hatched, which will be coming too soon. So when I read a book like that and then I think back to this, I'm like, this could have been so much better. I've seen quite a few people say that the world building is a lot better in this book. And yeah, we go to different places. That doesn't really make the world building better, really. I thought the world building in this was not great at all, especially reading a book like When the Moon Hatched and then comparing that to this. That is in a league of its own. This is not good. Essentially, I found this incredibly repetitive. The only thing that was keeping me hooked was the fact that every single chapter ended on a cliffhanger. It's just cliffhanger central, and if there wasn't cliffhangers at the end of every chapter, would I have carried on reading? Probably not. I was so excited about this. I spent all that time rereading Iron Flame and Fourth Wing to get round to this. It was very anticlimactic for me. It's annoying because I love this world so much, I love the characters so much, but this third book was a complete letdown, and the ending of this, I was just like, what? I just closed the book and just looked at my wall like, seriously? Really? It's a very generous 3 stars. That's quite an honest review. It's a very honest review. Please don't hate me. It's just my personal opinion on this. I love Fourth Wing, enjoyed, liked Iron Flame, but this one, yeah. Moving on to my final book of January. I really had to squeeze this one in because I've recently just joined chapter 25, which is a book club in the UK, and the book of the month for January was The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. This basically follows Delphi, who has ended up in the afterlife and she's found the one. He is then suddenly sent back down to Earth, and she's then given a chance, a deal to return to her previous life to reconnect with this person. The catch is that she only has 10 days to find him and make him fall in love with her. This initially sounded like quite a fun and extremely easy read. It's a rom-com, and I don't generally read rom-coms. This was my first book club read, and I DNF'd on page 150. A bit disappointed that I DNF'd my first book club read, but I just thought I can't spend any more time reading this book. I did not like the main character. I found it boring. I just wasn't interested in the story at all. Everyone else in the book club mainly loved it. My mum read it as well and she really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't for me. And yeah, because I DNF'd it, there's no rating for this one. Now we're moving on to my February reads, and I've read quite a few good books in February, and we're going to start off with my most anticipated read of the year. I still can't believe I have this book in my possession and that I've been able to read it already. My first read of February, and quite possibly my favourite book of the year so far, and I don't think anything is going to top it. I think it's going to be my favourite book of 2025. Look how stunning it is. I still can't believe I have this. It's such a gorgeous proof. I still can't believe that Orbit reached out to me to send me this book. So thank you so much, Orbit, for contacting me on Instagram and sending me this, because it was a dream and it came true, and I will be forever grateful for receiving this. This is publishing on the 20th of May. The Night and the Moth follows Sybil, who is a diviner, and as a diviner she is drowned to receive dreams from godly figures that are known as omens. But then her 5 other sister dreamers are suddenly starting to disappear. She reluctantly then seeks help from someone that she finds rather frustrating, and that's Roderick, which is the king's best knight. And together they venture out of the cathedral and into a kingdom that Sybil knows nothing about. So I just want to start off by saying that if I could give this book 6 stars, I would. When it came to writing my review on Goodreads, I kind of was just staring at the stars hoping that a 6-1 would randomly appear. I just love this so much. Rachel Gillig is one of my favourite authors. I just can't get over how beautiful this story is. No one writes like Rachel Gillig. Her prose is so lyrical and dreamy. I just love it, and the way she creates these atmospheric gothic worlds that are full of detail and soul is just breathtaking, and yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much. The story is set in the Stonewater Kingdom and it's incredibly unique. She's already wrote an incredibly unique world and magic system in the Shepherd King duology, so to have something again, her gift just keeps on giving. When it came to the characters as well, I felt like I already knew them. I loved Sybil so much. I feel so deeply attached to these characters, and one character in particular, and I would do anything for them. I would do anything for them. The plot again in this is incredible, and again, like the Shepherd King duology, the romance is a subplot in this as well, but God, it is beautiful. It's so tender and pure. It's just the most beautiful story about self-discovery, of love, magic, of life and death, good and evil, and yeah, quite frankly, I need book 2. I need the second book. I'm so excited for everyone to get their hands on this in May, because you're going to love it. Everyone is going to fall in love with this book, and I can't wait for everyone to read it and to be able to talk about it more. Undoubtedly, this is a 5 stars. If I could give it 6, I would. In my mind and in my heart, it's infinity stars. This next book is not a fantasy book. It is actually my first ever horror. So this was recommended to me at my book club that I went to at the start of February. We kind of got talking about books that we've read recently, and one of the ladies there had mentioned Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a wild read, and I was quite nervous before reading this because it was mentioned that this book is quite gory and graphic, so that was something that I was a bit nervous before going into this. There was a lot of things to this that I didn't know what to expect, but I mean, the cover itself is just so cool. I think it's such a cool cover. The story follows a 24-year-old Asian American called Cora. She's a crime scene cleaner in New York at the start of the COVID pandemic in 2020. And after a series of really quite violent killings, Cora then becomes suspicious that someone might be actually targeting Asian women. It's kind of a bit crazy to read something that's set during the pandemic because it was such a scary time for us all, and the way that this book is so scary and harrowing and graphic and covered quite a lot of important topics was really interesting. I felt so tense and unsettled, and this carried on throughout the whole book. As I've said, the story is set during the start of the pandemic, but that's not really the main focus of the story. It's a bleak, tragic and a dark story. It covers the reality, the quite realistic reality of the pandemic and the horrific racism that the Asian community faced, and that is really highlighted in this book. It's definitely gory. It definitely had me pulling quite a lot of faces. I was kind of reading it at some points and I was kind of a bit like, what a lovely image in my mind. This is about 4 out of 5 stars. Really good. I really enjoyed this. The next book that I read in February is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This story follows Rave, who is an assassin for a rebellious group. But then when a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down, Rave then finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, which is a powerful group of fae. This is one of those books that I put off for such a long time and then kick myself for wishing that I'd started it sooner. I also just want to say that if you're a Disney fan and if you've watched Raya and The Last Dragon, this book really did remind me of that. Not directly, but there's just like elements when I was reading this that kind of made me think of that film. From the beginning, this was everything I'd hoped for. The glossary is amazing in this. I actually ended up reading it on my Kindle majority of the time, just to be able to access the glossary a bit easier in the back of this book. When it comes to world building, it's done so well. It was spot on, the pacing was perfect, everything was described. I mean, the world building sets off straight from page 1 and already you feel like you can start connecting to it. I also decided to annotate this purely because I knew it was going to be a big book. I knew that there was going to be a lot of world building, and I kind of had an idea that there was a lot of things that I would kind of want to remember. I ultimately just found this world beautiful, and I just thought it was so interesting to learn about and so unique as well. Rave is now one of my favourite FMCs. She's badass, she's headstrong, she's sassy, she's witty. It's everything that I enjoy when it comes to female main characters. The MMC in this is also perfect. This book's full of action. There's so much that happens in it. It's also such a heartbreaking story as well. I'm in love with the story. I'm in love with the world. I'm in love with the characters. And if you've not read When the Moon Hatched yet, please don't be nervous about it. Please don't be intimidated and just start it. 5 stars. If I could rate it 6, I would. 5 stars. Loved it. Towards the end of February, I did need to pick up my book club's read of the month. I got to around 38%, so it will be included in my March wrap up. At the end of February, I started reading Remarkably Bright Creatures. It started off really cute, and I'm very excited to talk about this in my March wrap up. That's my January and February reading wrap up. I've got a few DNFs, but all in all, I've read quite a lot of books that I've really enjoyed this year so far. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to chatting about all the books I read in March at the end of the month. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could leave a comment or a like. I would be super grateful if you also decide to subscribe. Hope you're having a lovely morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!